Greetings, conscious entrepreneurs. I'm Sajda Wendy Muhammad. I wanted to talk to you about something that I've been working, or I've been really focusing on probably for the last 3 to 4 years. And it was born out of a prayer that I said 10 years ago, where I asked God to make me his conduit. And I started praying like, okay, use me, Lord, make me yours. And then I started just kind of studying what I call a spiritual trajectory. So all of us, for example, when we are in need and when the time is right, we start to experience enlightenment, right? We come into church, we get baptized, we join the nation, we begin to meditate, whatever our calling is that we feel is going to help us on the journey, we get that. And we know that we're taught in the Nation of Islam that self-improvement is the basis for community development. And so we start to study, right? We start to have a series of rapid levels of improvement. We may stop smoking. We may stop being promiscuous. We may stop doing drugs. We may stop drinking. We may stop doing a lot of things that we were doing, right, before that period of enlightenment. And as we're moving through that self-improvement process and we're studying and we're using the scriptures as affirmations, the spirit of revelation begins to bubble up in us, right? So you start to see our face change. You see our skin tone change. You see us start to lose weight. You see improvements in our lives. And that spirit of revelation gets bigger. And so now we start to realize certain gifts, spiritual gifts that we have, or we start to improve on certain spiritual gifts that we may or may not have had previously. Things like, and you see the competition begin in the circles where somebody's psychic. Another one has great levels of empathy. Someone else is a seer. Someone else is a palm reader. Someone else can read auras. Someone else is psychic. And as our ego gets boosted by the continual fruits of our self-improvement labor, or the continual fruits of the labor of self-improvement, our ego starts to get big. And we start to think we're better than the next person. We start to take score and compare ourselves to this person or that person. Or we start to feel like my gift is special. I'm better than the next person. And then as we get into that space, even if we're grateful from a egoic standpoint. Even if we're prayerful within the space of I'm special and I'm better. And then we start to notice that the fruits of our spiritual labor start to harvest less. They start to diminish. We don't see as much self-improvement as we did in the beginning. We begin to plateau. And we're just kind of feeling like, man, I've been dedicated, I've been devoted, I've been practicing, but it just seems like something about, I don't know what's going on. I'm not getting where I feel like I need to get. And then because we're in the practice of comparing, we're looking over at the next person going, how'd they get that? How'd they get extra attention? How'd they get this or that? Right? Do you know what begins to happen when the fruits of our self-improvement begin to grow and harvest, we can harvest them and we see them. It's just like farming, right? The seeds go down, the fruit comes, we harvest it, we eat it, but we start being able to have less and less fruit to eat. That's generally because our self-centeredness has expanded, or our self-consciousness has expanded, and we become vain. And you don't have to think you're cute to be vain. You don't have to be arrogant to think you're vain. You can be vain and be a crybaby. You can be vain and be evil and mean. You can be vain and be poor. See, all that means is that there's a certain level of self-consciousness that becomes bigger than the mission that you're on. And so once our self-consciousness expands to the point that it no longer outweighs our level of self-improvement, we start to plateau, sometimes go backwards. And then we put ourselves in a position where it becomes very difficult for us to line ourselves up with the Spirit of Almighty God. It becomes very difficult because we're caught up in our greed, we're caught up in our guilt, we're caught up in all these emotions that make us have an inordinate view of ourselves. So one would ask, how do you then check or put in check or reduce your sense of self-consciousness? Some people say gratitude. It works a little bit. You should always be grateful. But some of us are grateful within the context of self, within the context of me. Some people say, well, you should recognize Allah or God in everything. Well, some of us recognize God or Allah in everything, meaning that everything are the things that are important to our self-consciousness. So you know what happens oftentimes? We usually find ourselves in a position where after years and years of studying and years of thinking that we're all that, we're sitting on that plateau. We're not getting any movement. We're just praying to God that we're not going backwards. We're sitting on that plateau, and then Allah hits us with something big, some big trial, some big misfortune, some big challenge. And guess what that does? That brings us back to understanding that Islam or Allah happens after all else fails. So that's why as conscious entrepreneurs, I teach us that you should stay out up over your skis. You should be pushing always to move beyond your intellectual capacity. Why? Why is that important? That's important because that's where it's just you and Allah. You don't know how you're going to make it, but you have to rely on Allah, and you begin to change on the inside and become that person that God can personally interact with. Why can he personally interact with you? Because you know ain't nothing happening and ain't nothing moving without him. I want y'all to think about that. If you feel like you're at a plateau, if you feel like you should be doing more than what you should be doing, then how much are you challenging yourself? How much are you really relying on Almighty God Allah? How vain are you? So one of the things you all will hear me say that when I start talking about the Sajda House project, the development of the Elijah Muhammad House Museum, that I realize that my job is to do nothing but to submit and obey and praise. That's it. Why? Because I didn't pick myself for that. I didn't make myself for that. I didn't put the chain of events in my life together that put me in a position to be somewhat equipped to move out and handle it. That ain't me. That ain't got nothing to do with me. It's all a power outside of myself that I am working to align myself with. I'm out over my skis. And so it's all, oh Allah. It's all submission to Almighty God, Allah. It's all praying and hoping and working to be as close to Allah and His messenger and His servant as I possibly can. And I really don't care what anybody else thinks or has to say about it, because I'm working to move beyond my intellectual capacity. I'm working to dissolve my self-centeredness, if that makes sense. Anyway, look, I just had to get that off my chest. I was sitting outside. It's hot out here. You can hear my sprinklers and stuff going. Just doing some meditating and studying. I just finished my second major movement flow of the day, aka second workout of the day. In the evening, I do something a little lighter, depending on what I do in the morning. But that's my new thing that I've been doing, just trying to get in flows of movement throughout the day, instead of just sitting there at the computer all day or sitting there in meetings all day. Look, making a loop around the block, jumping down on the bicycle, going for a swim, doing some push-ups, lifting some weights, just hopping around, doing something to move and get that blood flow going. That's also going to be a great defense mechanism for those of you who do it against all of the infectious diseases and things like that that are around here, because you want to keep your blood flowing and your heart flowing so that it will cleanse your body and your organs. Anyway, go to SanjdaHouse.com, hit the discount code HEM4847 on the way out, get your commemorative Elijah coin. Thank you to everybody. We sent a shipment out today, and be it the will of Allah, y'all do some stuff overnight, we'll send another shipment out tomorrow. All right, so peace and blessings. We'll see you tomorrow at noon Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Central Time for the Mind of an Entrepreneur IG Live. All right, I can't wait to see y'all. Peace and blessings.